Hi everybody, and welcome back to card number 5 of the Christmas card series. If you missed the last card, you can find a link to that at the end of this video or in the description below. Let's go ahead and get started with today's card. I'm using a piece of crumb cake cardstock that is cut down to 3.5 by 4, and I'm going to run that through my Big Shot using the wood grain embossing folder. And then I'm taking my cherry cobbler cardstock and a Thinlits die from the Expressions set, and I did go ahead and run that through my Big Shot and punched out or die cutted the sentiment Mary. And with this one, because it's so thin and delicate, the sentiment, I'm using my paper piercer to just go ahead and poke out all the little sections in between the letters. And then the die has these little holes in it that help you peel the cardstock away from the die. So you just go ahead and take your paper piercer and poke it through the hole, and it kind of pulls the sentiment away from the die, and then you can just very carefully pull that out of the die. You have to be really careful because it is very delicate. The next thing I'm doing is taking a piece of old olive cardstock, and I'm using my large scallop edgelets die and just lining that up using my magnetic platform, and I'll run that through my Big Shot once I have that all straightened out and even. And the next thing I'm going to do is just take my embossing buddy, and going over that scallop piece that I just cut out, I'm going to take the Christmas sentiment, which comes from the Endless Wishes stamp set. It's a photopolymer stamp set. I'm going to ink that up using some Versamark ink and stamp that onto my old olive cardstock. And I'm kind of stamping that to the left a little bit because I didn't want it to be right in the center. And then I'll use some white embossing powder and sprinkle that on over to the sentiment. The embossing powder sticks to the Versamark, and then what you would do is just take your heat tool and set that, and that will melt the embossing powder. So once I have my embossing powder all heated up and melted, I'm going to go ahead and take that piece of crumb cake that I embossed with the wood grain embossing folder, and I am going to add a lot of adhesive. With the embossed paper, it doesn't hold as well, so I like to make sure I use a lot of adhesive on this so that I know that it's adhered down really well, and it'll sit nice onto my card base, which is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. And I'm just going to go ahead and line that crumb cake up at the top of that card. So once I have that adhered down, I'm going to take a piece of pattern paper from the Seasons of Style pattern paper set, and I have that cut down to 4 by 2.5, and I'm just lining that up at the bottom. So I kind of created a little matte section with that. So once I have that all lined up and looking pretty straight, which you can see I'm kind of fighting with it a little bit here. And once I have that lined up, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it's adhered down really well. And then I will take the old olive piece that I embossed the Christmas sentiment on and some old olive taffeta ribbon. I'm going to wrap that around my die cut piece there and throw a little piece of tape on the back. That's going to help anchor that down when I go to tie my bow, and you'll see that in a second here. So I'm going to grab a piece of tape and stick that right onto the back of that scallop piece, and that'll hold it in place. And then I'm going to take my snail adhesive and run some snail adhesive along the back of that, and then we'll go ahead and adhere that down to my card base. The old olive actually measures 4 1/4 going across, so it's going to go across the whole front of my card. So you won't really tell that I was a little off on that designer series piece. It's a little bit shorter than the crumb cake. So once I have that adhered down, I'm going to go ahead and take that old olive ribbon and tie a bow, which, by the way, took me probably about 10 minutes to get right, and in the end I still wasn't right and retied it, so you'll see that at the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that on, and I'm tying my bow to the right a little bit so it kind of balances with the Christmas sentiment. Once I have my bow tied, I'm going to take my little Mary sentiment and using some mono Tombow Mono adhesive, liquid adhesive. I'm just going to go ahead and add little dots all along the back of that sentiment, and then I will adhere that down to the front of my card. Just got to move that little piece of ribbon out of the way there, and then I'll adhere that down right over the crumb cake cardstock. And then you'll see I switched up my ribbon so that it was tied better. I didn't like that it was not going in the right direction. It was a little off. So now I'm just going to take my white gel pen and add some stitch lines going around the outside of my card. And then I'm going to take some candy dots. And I am not sure if I used cherry cobbler dots or if I used a different color. I had a hard time telling between the two different shades. I don't know if this was the Melon Mambo or Cherry Cobbler, but it looked pretty close to me, so I went ahead and used that. And I just threw 3 of those dots on there, and that's my card for today. I hope you enjoyed today's card, and here are a few pictures of the completed card. As always, a list of supplies will be down below and over on my blog. If you missed the last video, you can click where it says click here to watch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.